Before we spent over 40 days exploring Iceland, before the lagoons, the waterfalls, the northern lights and all the trips we've taken since, there was one journey that started it all, our very first time in Iceland. We booked it on a whim, 5 days in January, hardly any daylight, freezing temperatures and absolutely no idea what to expect. And yet this trip completely changed everything for us. From driving in Iceland for the first time, to seeing our first Icelandic waterfall, to floating in the Sky Lagoon at sunset, to feeding Icelandic horses on the side of the road, discovering hidden gems we never knew existed, and standing in the absolute stillness of the place we didn't even know were real. This trip was the reason we fell in love with the land of fire and ice. In this video, we're taking you with us day by day through every moment of that first adventure. What we did, what we saw, the mistakes we made, the places we loved, and at the end, exactly how much the entire trip cost us. So sit back, relax, and join us on the journey that started our obsession with Iceland. And if you're planning your own Iceland trip, this might just be the perfect place to start. Let's go. So let's start right at the beginning. January the 21st, Ryan's birthday, and the day we flew to Iceland for the very first time. We flew from Gatwick with EasyJet on a 7 AM flight, and because we'd driven down from the Midlands the night before, I slept pretty much through the entire flight. So when I woke up, we were already descending into Keflavík, and that moment will always stay with me. Looking out the window was one of the best feelings in the world. The sky was just starting to lighten with a tiny hint of sunrise, but below us you could see all the town lights glowing in the darkness. It just didn't feel real. It was quite magical. We were so excited, but honestly, we were also quite nervous. We'd watched every video, read every blog, packed every layer imaginable, and we still had no idea what to expect. I think I was definitely more nervous than Ryan because I had to drive in a different country for the first time in my life. But we landed, we breezed through arrivals with just our hand luggage as we'd only come for 5 days and we were pretty much wearing what felt like 6 layers each. We were preparing for Arctic conditions, and then we stepped outside Keflavík and realised it wasn't actually that cold. We were both roasting. Layers came off instantly. Honestly, it was proper overkill. We found the car hire rep holding the sign and he led us out to a minibus waiting outside and drove us to the office of the car hire rental. That ride to the rental office was our first look at Iceland, and honestly it completely blew us away. White everywhere, snow covering every open space, that huge, vast, endless landscape honestly felt like another planet. At the car hire office, I handed over my ID, our booking reference and credit card, and then the moment of truth. They handed us the keys. And suddenly I was driving in Iceland. A new country, new car, wrong side of the road. What could go wrong? But honestly, once you get going, you realise it's actually really easy and straightforward. Just take it slow, focus, and you'll be fine. So our first stop was Reykjavík. We parked down by the Sun Voyager and went for a little wander, and it just felt surreal seeing everything we'd only ever seen online in person. Ryan insisted in checking out an Icelandic supermarket straight away to see what vegetarian food he could find, priorities obviously, and at around 3 o'clock we had our booking at the Sky Lagoon. It was perfectly timed for sunset. It was busy but absolutely beautiful, just floating in the warm water, drink in hand, watching the sunset over the Atlantic. That was the exact moment we fell in love with Iceland. After the Sky Lagoon, we drove to our hotel in Hveragerði, about 40 minutes away. Driving in the dark with snow starting to fall again felt a bit intimidating, but we just took it slow and it was absolutely fine. We checked into Hotel Ork, dropped the bags and headed straight to Bonus, which is just around the corner, for some drinks, snacks, bread, butter and cheese, all the essentials, so we could make packed lunches for the next day's adventure. By this point, the exhaustion hit us hard. Travelling, waking up early, flying, exploring, driving for the first time in Iceland, it all caught up with us. So we headed back to the hotel and went to bed pretty early. We slept like logs, warm, tired and very excited, ready for a big day 2. Now day 2 started bright and early. Well, early but not so bright. We woke up around 8 AM and it was still completely pitch black outside. It was also -7, which hit us the second we checked the weather. Welcome to Iceland in January, I suppose. So we headed down for breakfast at the hotel and then we went back to the room to wrap up and get ready for our first proper day of adventure in Iceland. Stepping outside into that freezing air, getting into the car and driving out into the darkness felt surreal. And then as we got further down the road, the sun slowly started rising behind the mountains and lighted up the snowy landscape. It was beautiful. Honestly, it felt like something out of a film. So our first stop was Hveragerði, which sits right next to Skógafoss, but it's often completely overlooked. We parked up, walked along the track between the rocks, and then around the corner we saw our first ever Icelandic waterfall, and it absolutely took our breath away. Ryan was completely mesmerised. He just stopped in his tracks and stared at it. We walked as close as we safely could, but it was extremely icy, so we didn't push it too far. We did, however, make it right down to the river and even tried some of the glacier water. It's ice cold, fresh, and honestly tastes so clean. Then we headed to the big one, Skógafoss. No matter how many photos or videos you see, nothing prepares you for standing in front of it. It's just huge, powerful, loud, but even then, we still felt like Hveragerði doesn't get the attention it really deserves. As we got closer to Skógafoss, the morning sunshine hit the spray and the rainbow appeared right in front of us. Ryan was completely taken aback, one of those moments where you just stand and stare. Next, we drove back towards Seljalandsfoss. Now, I really like this waterfall because it's iconic and it's quite easy to get to. But Ryan, he doesn't really rate it as much, and that's okay. Iceland will always give you favourites for different reasons. And then just a few minute walk away from Seljalandsfoss is Blúabotn, the hidden waterfall inside the cave. Now this one was pure magic. It's like walking through the little stream, squeezing between the rocks, and then suddenly you find this waterfall hidden away from the world. It is beautiful. Now it can be pretty slippery and icy in the winter, so waterproof boots are a must. My joggers even froze solid after this one. That's how cold it was. Then after warming up in the car, we drove down to Reykjavík, a quiet little coastal village with a beautiful black sand beach. That day, blocks of ice had washed up onto the shore and we sat there watching the most incredible orange sunset melt into the sea. It was a proper wow moment. Now by this point, we were starving, so we headed back to Hveragerði for dinner. And just around the corner from the hotel, we found the nicest little eatery. We ordered a large pizza, which was pretty big, fries and 2 refillable drinks, and the whole lot came to around £18 for the both of us. Absolute bargain for Iceland. After that, we headed back to Hotel Ork, completely exhausted, buzzing from everything we'd seen. That was the end of our first full day in Iceland, and we were already excited to dive straight into day 3. So day 3 started in the best possible way. We had a surprise blanket of snow. We headed out to the car around 9 AM, and overnight Iceland had transformed completely. There was a huge amount of snowfall, and as the designated driver, I very quickly delegated the job of clearing all that snow off the car to Ryan. He wasn't thrilled, but honestly he did a great job. Sort of. So our first stop of the day was the Secret Lagoon. It's one of Iceland's oldest natural lagoons. And just head up, if you are going, the change rooms are completely communal with no private cubicles, so it's worth knowing beforehand. We were the only people in the lagoon for the first 45 minutes and it was honestly magical. The water is naturally heated by a geothermal spring and you can swim up pretty close to it as well and watch it bubble and erupt every so often. We stayed in there for about an hour and a half, just floating, relaxing and soaking in the snowy scenery around us. It was peaceful, quiet and exactly what you imagine an Icelandic hot spring to be. After we got out, we walked around the lagoon on the wooden walkways to look at all the little hot springs dotted around. Then it was back to the car because today was Golden Circle Day. Our first stop, the Geysir Hot Springs. So we parked up and walked into the geothermal park until we found the main attraction, Strokku. You can always tell which one it is because there's just a crowd of people standing in a circle with their phones ready, waiting for that huge eruption. And when it erupts, it is honestly incredible. The power, the sound, the water shooting into the air, it just never gets old. And after seeing that a few times and wandering around, we then headed back into the Geysir Centre, which has a cafe, a homeware shop, loads of souvenirs and a 66 degrees north store. Now, if you don't know, 66 degrees north is Iceland's version of the North Face, but better, as you can tell. We love it, even if it can be on the expensive side. Next up was Lagfart Fontana, where we'd booked the natural bread making experience through Get Your Guide. If we were to do this again, we'd definitely swap the order of the day round, so do Fontana first before Geysir and Gullfoss, because we had to drive back and forth between the stops and they are on the same road. But the experience itself was amazing. So they showed us how they dig the bread up from the ground after it's been baking underground using geothermal heat for 24 hours, and we even got to try the warm rye bread with Icelandic butter and fresh smoked trout from the lake. Ryan didn't try the trout as he is vegetarian. And even though Fontana has a hot spring spa, we didn't go in, we were saving that for another trip. After Fontana, we headed to Gullfoss, one of Iceland's most iconic waterfalls. We parked at the top near the cafe and the gift shop, and even from the viewing platform at the top, it was just breathtaking. The scale of it doesn't hit you until you walk down the steps to the lower viewpoint. The power of that water, especially in winter, is unbelievable, just covered in snow. On the way back, we spotted a little farm by the side of the road with some Icelandic ponies. This was incredible. We pulled over and found a little honesty box where you could buy snacks to feed them. Now, this wasn't planned at all, we just came across it and it ended up being one of our favourite moments of the whole trip. They were so gentle and friendly, and it was just such a wholesome, unexpected experience. By the time we got back to the hotel, we were completely exhausted. Driving, exploring, the cold, fresh winter air and all the excitement. It all just catches up with you in Iceland. We fell into bed that night absolutely worn out and already dreading the fact that the next day was our last. Day 4 hit us the moment we opened our eyes. That sinking feeling you get when you realise it's your last full day somewhere you've fallen in love with. We went down for breakfast, got ready and headed out determined to soak up every second. We wanted a slower, more relaxed day after all the exploring we'd done, so we decided to head back into Reykjavík. The drive back was just as unbelievable as the first time. Fresh snow, white mountains, changing scenery, the cold blue light of winter. There were moments where we just sat in silence in the car, taking it all in, completely in awe of Iceland. It's one of those countries that makes you feel small, but in the best possible way. Our first stop was Grotto Lighthouse. We drove all the way down to the end of the peninsula, parked up and walked across the beach. The tide was out, which meant we could walk all the way over to the lighthouse and around it. It was windy, like properly windy, but absolutely beautiful. Just waves, snow and that long stretch of black sand. After Grotto, we headed back into Reykjavík for a wander. We explored the little gift shops, and that's when we met Ophelia the cat. So she technically belongs to a neighbour, but apparently she loves to roam around and nap in icewear, usually on top of a pile of woolen scarves. If you're ever heading into Reykjavik and you go into icewear, you'll most probably see her fast asleep. She is real. And it's one of the cutest things ever. We walked around Hallgrímskirkja, took in the views of the colourful streets below, headed down to the Sun Voyager and explored the harbour. Just taking our time, enjoying the city without rushing. For a late lunch, we headed to Svartakafið, and honestly it was the best meal of the entire trip. Soup in a bread bowl. Simple but unreal. A little on the pricey side, but absolutely worth it. After that, we started making our way back towards Hveragerði. But instead of taking the direct route, we decided to drive through Þingvellir National Park. That drive felt like stepping onto another planet. Cold, empty, desolate, but breathtaking all at once. This day had this eerie blue misty light, which made the whole place feel unreal. We parked and went for a walk through the park, saw the summer residence of the Icelandic Prime Minister, the little church beside it, and then headed to Waterfalls. The waterfall was beautiful, frozen edges, icy rocks, and that soft blue winter light over the whole landscape. It was one of those moments where you just stop talking and just look. As the lights started to fade, we headed back to the hotel one last time. Back to Hotel Ork. We packed our bags slowly, neither of us wanting the day to end. Iceland had completely captured us. The vastness, the beauty, the silence, the cold, the landscapes. You just can't explain it properly to someone who hasn't seen it in person. We went to bed that night knowing we'd fallen in love with the country we'd only just begun to understand. And we already knew we'd be back. Day 5 began with a feeling we hadn't quite expected. A kind of quiet sadness. We woke up knowing that in just a few hours we'd be heading home to normality. Back to work, back to routine. It felt strange because Iceland had always been one of those countries where we'd both dreamt about it for years. It was a one-day destination and suddenly we'd lived it and now it was coming to an end. But deep down, we both knew. We were coming back. Iceland has this way of sort of getting under your skin. It captivates you, slowly and completely. We left the hotel that morning, said goodbye to our little renter car, which had genuinely become our companion over the last few days, and made one final drive back into Reykjavik. Even after 4 days of exploring, the views still stopped us in our tracks. Snow, mountains, open roads, we were still very much in awe with this country. Wandered around Reykjavik one last time, taking it in properly, the shops, the colours, the quiet winter atmosphere. We picked up a few souvenirs to bring home with us, little reminders of the trip that had ended up meaning far more than we'd expected. Eventually, it was time to head back to Keflavík. We dropped off the rental car, handed over the keys and got back into the minibus and headed back to the airport. And neither of us spoke the entire journey. We both just sat there staring out the window, catching every last glimpse of the landscape we'd completely fallen in love with. At the airport, we headed into departures, not realising until later that if you go through passport control, there are actually more shops and restaurants. Now, Keflavík airport is actually pretty small, so we mostly just sat and waited for the flight, already missing the place. Then came the moment we just couldn't avoid. We boarded the plane, took our seats and took off back towards the UK, back to reality, back to everything we were used to. But we left Iceland with this unshakable feeling. This wasn't goodbye. This was just the beginning. One day we knew for sure we'd return to the land of fire and ice. Alright, before we wrap up this video, let's go through the bit everyone always wants to know. How much did our first trip to Iceland actually cost? So we were there for 5 days in January and we're going to break down every single thing we paid for. No surprises, no guesswork, just the real numbers. So the flights and hotel we booked through Love Holidays, which included our return flights from Gatwick, our 4 nights at Hotel Lagoon and Hveragerði, and all together that came to £604 for the 2 of us. We hired a car for all 5 days, including the full insurance package, which cost us £312. With all the driving we did, Reykjavík, the south coast, the Golden Circle, Þingvellir National Park, we spent £120 on fuel. We booked the Pure Pass at Sky Lagoon for the perfect sunset experience, which came to £174 for the both of us. And entry to the Secret Lagoon was about £60 for the 2 of us. We did the natural bread bacon experience at Lagoon and Hveragerði, and that cost around £50. Between meals out, snacks, packed lunches and supermarket bits and bobs, we spent around £250 on food and drink. Reykjavík parking and a few paid parking areas for Waterfalls and the National Park during sightseeing totaled roughly £40, bringing a grand total to £1,610 for the both of us all in. That's flights, hotel, car, fuel, lagoons, activities, food, literally everything. And looking back, we still can't actually believe how much we managed to fit into that budget, and every penny was worth it. This was the trip that made us fall in love with Iceland and the reason we keep going back. And that was our first ever trip to Iceland, the one that started it all for us. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe and stick around for more Iceland travel hints and tips. We've got so many videos coming up, including a full breakdown of the second time we visited Iceland for 10 days, and that trip was on a completely different level. We're also back in January for 10 days, so make sure you subscribe for that. Keep an eye out, and if you want to try any of the activities we did on this trip, or if you plan your own adventure, we've popped some of the links in the description below to the lagoons, experiences and car hire we used. Tack för det här, and we'll see you on the next one.